Hey folks, this is Best in Slot. Welcome back to our Amsterdam-inspired city build for Planet Zoo. Today we're going to build a big old train station. Basically, it's inspired by the Amsterdam Central train station, which I believe is Central. I think there's two A's in there in Dutch. And also the Amsterdam Museum. I don't know what the name is, like Rijkevaart or something, but it's the big museum in Amsterdam. Now, if you missed the last video where I talked about this, you won't know why there's already a building here. Basically, I started work on this building a long time ago, before episode 1, really, and I did all of what you've seen so far. Just a couple hours work just building the shell. Decided I hate the roof, so that's gone. Just a couple of hours just building the shell that you see in front of you. Again, based on the real building. Unfortunately, I lost that footage, so I've just kind of taken the shell, and we're going to spend a lot of time today developing it further, building up on it, making it all fancy pants, basically. And I've got to say, I know I say this a lot about my building skills. I'm a little iffy. This is probably the best building I've ever made. The outside, anyway. I'm still not sure about interiors. I'm still struggling a little bit with that aspect. The interior isn't really done at this point in time, but the outside looks really good, if I do say so myself. And I do. If I don't big myself up, who else is going to? Everyone will. Okay, anyways, let's build the roof there, just using some slate. I mean, it's inspired by this other building, but I made some creative decisions on my own as well. I find it very helpful with Planet Zoo. One of the reasons I'm enjoying this build and kind of just sticking with it, the whole zoo, is because I've always got ideas for the builds, right? There's always things to base it on, there's always an inspiration point. Even the red light district, which I wasn't really taking from real world buildings for most of it, was a very set idea. And when I have like a very evocative idea in my head, I find it very easy to do and I really enjoy it. And then when I lose those ideas is when I start to struggle. And that happened on something else towards the end of this video, which we'll see. But what I'm doing in the middle, you see I've got these this is actually really interesting how this is going to go, but I've got these, not walkies, I was saying walkies, what, canopy kind of things in the middle. Basically in front of the, I don't think it's the train station, in front of the museum there's this big pool, basically this big water feature kind of thing with these floating these plant planters in the water kind of floating there. It's just a nice backdrop in front of the museum. It's a front drop, I guess. So I decided I was going to build that, basically. So all I'm doing here is making sure that the ground is flat. We're building a glass cage sort of shebang, and then filling it up with water and dropping the fence down to make it as invisible as humanly possible, and then we'll build up around the outside of this and turn it into a bit of a water feature. So that's what we're doing now, bit of stone around the outside. Of course it's not straight, because why would it ever be straight? That would be a terrible thing. Yeah, this same kind of deal. This is inspired by it, like it very much looks like it, and then I kind of went in my own direction for some of the other details, but just working on the outskirts. You can see it's not quite perfect there at the edge. It's I don't know if this has happened yet, but well, I'll get to that point in a minute. None of this makes any sense yet, but it will. Just sticking stuff on, just making it look cool, making it look cool beans. You know, if you've got beans, I mean, I prefer hot beans personally. Depends on the bean, I suppose. Are there any beans that you'd want cool? Not really. It's neither here nor there. Now, I don't know if you can tell at this point in time. I will realize that so I'm building a fountain. Let's focus on the fountain. I'm building a fountain. There's no fountain in the actual thing, but I felt that it needed something to break it up. I think mine is maybe a little bit longer than the one in reality, and it was a little bit too much wide open space for my liking, so I'm going to build a weird little fountain. We've got our ibex in there, which of course we'll be bringing into the zoo very soon, and this isn't really my thing, the fountain thing. I don't super know what I'm doing, but I just stuck some stuff together until it looked okay. I'm still not sure what I want to do for the ibex. The whole idea behind this train station was you hop onto the train and that takes you up into the mountains, and that's where the ibex exhibit is, and that's where the lynx exhibit is. But how does that make sense? Is the question. Is it a zoo? Is it just random exhibits? Is it something else up there that happens to have exhibits? I feel like just getting a train up to the mountains to look at an ibex and a lynx is a weird thing to do, right? Like, I don't feel that makes a lot of sense. I feel like there has to be something else there to go along with it. I'm thinking of having like a mine tour or something like that, or I don't really know at this point in time. Anyway, so these are the planters. Just sticking some azaleas in there, and just using the plants I'll be using for the entire thing, basically. Just filling us up. Just nothing special, just a nice little blob of colour, essentially. But yeah, if you've got any ideas, you know, ibex or links, throw me some suggestions or something else the mountain could be used for. I don't really know. I'm tempted to. Well, we'll talk about that later. But anyways, with that done, so I don't know if you can see it in the water, but anyways, what this is here, there's a problem here, right? This is like a very famous sign. This is right in front of the museum in the middle of Amsterdam. It says "I Amsterdam." Get it? Ah, that's clever. I kind of just, I wanted to build it, right? Because it's a cool looking sign. It's very strong design wise. It really stands out and it looks really cool. The problem is, of course, that this zoo is not Amsterdam. It's not meant to be in Amsterdam. It's meant to be New Dale. I'm honestly considering scrapping the New Dale name and just calling this an Amsterdam zoo. And it'll be Amsterdam in like an alternate timeline, essentially. Because it's so inspired by Amsterdam. I even built all my signs, all my flags, which will be in this video, calling it Amsterdam because I didn't even think otherwise, you know. It might be the right thing to do. Alternatively, maybe Dale is like a district or something in Amsterdam. That could be a good way around it. Anyways, building some flags here. This is going to be like an advertisement for the museum itself. And yeah, a lot of this is again based on the real area. So there's a big water rectangle thing with the planters, then the I Am Amsterdam behind it, and then the museum stands behind that. In front of the train station isn't nearly as exciting, so combining the two is a nice way to pay homage to both buildings and also look a little sexier as we do it. The path was getting super weird here. It's a grid path, so the entire area is filled with path, but I don't know what I'm doing. I'm just Googling for inspiration, I think. The benches would not go in the correct place at all. The benches were just doing their own thing. It was kind of annoying. So these were really interesting. There's these lights around this water pool in reality where it's kind of these... I've not seen them at night time and I couldn't get a close-up photo, but they're basically tall red poles that have a light at the top and then a little finagle on top of that. There's an official term. And they look interesting. You know, they're a bit unique, so I thought, you know, it's another thing we should try to integrate. I wasn't sure what to put at the top, so I just put a finagle, you know? And we're going to have these basically going all the way down the side. It's a nice like pop of colour. It's a unique street lamp kind of thing, and it just makes it feel a little bit different. But I've made too many of them, so I got rid of half of them. A few planters at the front, just necessary really. It's just... I still hate dead space. You know, I can't have empty room. I need cram things in as much as humanly possible. I think I've mentioned this before, but when the zoo is open and there's people coming in, I think that'll help a lot. Doing a little coach section over here at the side. I'm going to end up changing this quite a lot later on in the video. They're all kind of parked at the side at the moment, but I wanted it to feel like they'd actually emerged from a logical place. Like the coaches in the other part of the zoo could not possibly get to where they are unless they've been airlifted in, basically, or they've emerged from the ground like an old god. So instead, I'm going to do like a road and everything, and that's how those coaches get in. Doing a little bit more work on the building now. That'll be the focus for quite a while. It is a lot of work that needs to be done on this building. I really wanted it to be a showpiece. You know, I really wanted it to stand out and feel a little bit special, I suppose, and to really stick out in the, you know, it's the biggest building in the zoo. It's probably always going to be the biggest building in the zoo, at least in terms of height. I've got another little something planned that we'll talk about later on. And I was very much basing this on the real building. I think I'm back to the train station here for this, although the roof is more inspired by the museum, I think. It's hard to know, guys. It's hard to know. But yeah, just going to start working on things. The interesting challenge with it always really is just trying to recreate a real building as close as you can, but using... Not that Planet Zoo has a limited suite of tools, but it's limited compared to if you were a real-life builder, where you can do any shape you want, basically. You don't have an infinite number of shapes in Planet Zoo, so you kind of have to finagle things around, you have to work things out for yourself. At the side of this building, there's these clock faces, these big clock faces, which is what I'm working on here. They're like indented into the wall. And tried lots of things. I was going to build it myself, that kind of colours, this kind of pinkies and yellows and stuff like that, and it just wasn't looking right. So I thought, you know what we'll do? We'll just get a photo of the clock. So I found a stock photo of the clock, meticulously tore it apart in Photoshop. Took about an hour. Took absolutely ages. But I had to sort of, you know, use the clone stamp tool and do some actual hand painting myself to make it look not like it's covered in stock credits, basically. I was going to buy it, but then I didn't. I'm sorry. Anyways, so that'll be replaced later on. And now we just start chucking on details. These little pillars that I found have been an absolute lifesaver for me. They've made such a big difference. There's so many different ways they've become useful. Those ones on the left, those sort of square ones with a little justy out bit at the top. But yeah, just starting to add on the details. There's a lot of intricate details on the build, and there's a lot of stuff sort of a bit further back. You kind of want it to... You're not going to see a lot of this stuff, but I just wanted it so every angle you were going to get. Like, the back of the building hasn't really been designed, just because I didn't do this as a separate thing, and I just didn't want to do it again. But every angle you do see should feel interesting and, you know, decorative. I wish we had some more flat shapes as well, that would be cool. I just want Prehistoric Kingdom scale button, if I'm honest. It would change my life. But things like this, it was kind of like there's these statues and there's this bronze shaping, there's a crown at the top, so I'm just using what we have available. You're really only going to see glimpses of it from a distance, but from a distance it looks like, you know, like people or like lions, and then there's brass and like a little crown, and just trying to be evocative, really. And underneath, so I try to click my jaw. My jaw's been very clicky lately. Hanging out with the other jaws. They've all got best friends and I'm not really included. It's very sad. See, the joke there is clicky means two things. Anyways. Underneath this top section, below the roof, there's this huge series of flags, shields, things, I don't know, heraldry of some description, of all different shapes and colours. Now, at this point, we're using the flags, and this is really annoying, because I went through and I coloured all of these to match the bloody real life ones. One by one, I went through each individual flag to match it. I ended up killing all of these. I had this in mind, and I was using the flag. I was thinking, oh, these are a little weak looking, a little thin, a little small. And what I was actually thinking of is the new shields that got added as part of the European pack. That's what I meant to use and kind of forgot they existed, so we'll be swapping those out later on. There's like a flag tower pole thing at the front of the building, so again we're going to use this stuff there. It'll look good, yeah. I'm so happy with this building. And again, just trying to match things up. But now, using the actual windows was never really going to work. The shapes are just wrong. You don't really have the control to modify. The reason I wanted to is because there's quite a lot of curved sort of buildings, curved sections of building on the actual building, so trying to find a way to make that work. When Planet Zoo actually doesn't have a great many curved things, basically, it needs some smaller circles. That'd be really, really useful. But, you know, you finagle things around a little bit and you kind of make things work, you know? And end up getting some really interesting shapes in them. I still can't think of what I'm going to do with this bloody Lynx and Ibex. Do I want to go into the mountains? I've built the train station. It seems silly to not use it. I don't know, we'll see. Anyways, yeah, nice tall windows there, again matching the reality. And move on to another section. So there's, what, 4 or 5 little individual sections that all have their own unique style of decoration, basically. They all have their own requirements. I feel like I got better. That top section I just did is probably the worst of the bunch. I wish these were a bit smaller. We had rocks that match them as well. There's a lot of things like that where you just can't quite find the thing that fits, so you need to, you know, I'm not going to say the word finagle ever again. I've said it too much already, it's crazy. But finagle, you know, to make it work. So yeah, just trying to match what I see in reality, stick some... This is a hard video to talk about. What am I supposed to talk about? I'm just doing things. I'm just describing what I'm doing. I suppose that's YouTube for you, really, isn't it? In a lot of ways. Another thing I had was a lot of these are recessed on the actual building, and that was quite difficult to do as well without bringing the brick out. I did it at the top a bit, pretty well with the limestone indentation, but it wasn't really working with the others. Also realizing, so originally the plan was you were going to enter this from the right hand side, because I didn't see a good way to enter the building from the front. I ended up scrapping that entirely later on, as you'll see. But it did mean that the side of the building, particularly the right hand side, but indeed the left, had to match in decoration. It had to be just as, not necessarily just as detailed, but near enough there. The back of the building I'm not going to do yet. The plan is that the back of the building is basically going to look out onto a canal, and then I'll back that onto a bunch of buildings that you'll never get to. It's just kind of meant to be the backdrop for this area. So in theory, the back of the building will never be visible, but we'll see how things go. It depends where the train goes. It depends if there's other plans, blah, 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 blah. Blardy 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 blar, as the kids say. They've stopped saying Shingo Shango, now they say blardy 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 blar. So that is actually most of it done. We've got 2 more sections to go. So building up the inside a little bit as well. swapping the decided to swap the limestone for brick at the bottom because the limestone cuts in really nicely. It's like a nice accent to the brick, and it's harder to do that if you've already got limestone, oddly enough. Lots of these lines, and then just really messing around with the reliefs more than anything else. There's a lot of this kind of intricate detail in the real building that needs bringing to life. Now the reliefs don't necessarily match, of course, but just doing what we can, really. Trying to make it sexy. That's all you can do, folks. All you can do. That's the most silence I've ever had in one of these videos, and it's very disconcerting. I didn't like it at all. Did not like that at all. Yeah, that part's pretty simple by the looks of things. Loads of this stuff. Loads of this. Edging. He doesn't love a good edging. And these bottom bits at the side, these were a little tricky. In the real building, it's not a great colour. It's kind of yellow, like behind the limestone or the plaster or whatever it is in reality. It's kind of yellow in colour. And oh yeah, I was building these. I was quite proud of these actually. Use these little brackets to make like an archway, like a teeny tiny one, and then it thickens up a little bit at the bottom and doubles up. Again, this is what it looks like in reality. And it's kind of this colour, and in reality it looks okay, but on here it looks stupid, so I thought we'll just scrap that. It's kind of an important thing to keep in mind, really. Like, whilst you do... I really wanted a human, and the gorilla was the closest it was going to get, but it wasn't really working out. You know, you can use a real building for inspiration, but not necessarily everything is going to translate one-to-one in real life. Now, sometimes you are trying to build a 100% realistic translation. Some people are trying to build realistic one-to-one interpretations of real-life zoos. There's some incredible projects out there, like working on London Zoo and stuff like that. Phenomenal job. And in that case, you would stick to it. But for this, where I'm being a little bit more interpretive, you know, we can do what we want, basically. And that means scrapping things like if the colour doesn't look good in Planet Zoo, well, we'll just get rid of it. It's fine. If there's one thing I feel like I need to do, the inside of the building feels it's very blocky brick at the moment. It doesn't look like a train station, where train stations are always arched inside and there's always metal and glass going on. This is where I swapped to the shields. I haven't colored these in yet, but just putting them in the right place and kind of trying to match the pattern to what it would be in reality as well. Decided, as you can see, the side entrance I just thought was never going to look good. And the actual train station has an entrance like this. It looks like a train station entrance. It's modern, it's metal, and this texture that looks similar to the opaque glass in Planet Zoo, which is what I'm using here. And it's built into the facade of this old brick building, and I think it's a really nice contrast between the modern materials and the brick materials with all the elaborate limestone, in this case, design and stuff like that. It's like a really sharp contrast between the two, which I thought was pretty cool. The glass walls, by the way, wrong colour. I don't like the glass panels or something. I can't remember the colourable ones. That's an official term. They're the wrong colour. They don't match the actual opaque, the translucent glass. It's really annoying. Anyways, minor point. So yeah, just trying to match this to reality. Again, realising here that I've called this Amsterdam. Oh no, I realised it's called Dale. I think that's what we're going to go with. It is an alternate reality Amsterdam, but the area in Amsterdam, the district, is called Dale, and that way I can justify every decision I've made pretty easily, I think. I wanted something over here on the left-hand side. Just trying to fill space. So I thought, okay, well, it's a train station. Usually they've got like the main entrance above ground, but then they've got a underground entrance, which is how you get down to the subway or something like that. And Amsterdam Central does actually have a section like this as well, as most train stations do. Especially in major cities. Well, in major cities, really, where there's usually a subway or an underground of some form attached, whereas in obviously more rural places, you don't really have a subway in the middle of the countryside, but neither here nor there. So just wanted to build up a little train station. Not really too much going in to the bottom of that in detail-wise. It's just going to kind of sit here and provide a little detail, fill up the space more than anything else, if I'm totally honest with you. That's really my main shebang. Oh, I should mention, for this video, I think I've already talked so much, you know. I think what I'm going to try to do, because I feel like what I do after these bits, and I've talked constantly, I say so many words, and then we hop in game and I just talk more, but I don't really add anything new because you guys have heard me talk about all this stuff already. I'm just going to do some shots. I'm just going to go in camera mode and record and try to make it look pretty. I'm not going to say anything. It's just going to be a good showcase for what this actually looks like. in as much detail as possible. I think it'll be better. I'm just going to try it for this video. We'll see how it goes. I know people like hearing me blabber on because there's something wrong with you all, but I'm only doing it for 25 bloody minutes, so I'm sure you'll survive if I don't do it for another 3 or 4. This is the major area I'm having a problem with right here. This is I've done a little bit more work on it, but it still doesn't look good. It's meant to be like a little ticket office kind of thing. I decided to stop working on that and work on the coaches. Am I going back to it? I don't know. I never know what I'm doing. Much like in real life. Just filling up a gap there. Do some lights on the station. Anyways, yeah, it's like a ticket office kind of thing. So it's meant to resemble the train station. Is like this part of the train station is meant to be a little bit more modern, a little bit more up to date. Lots of metal in this opaque glass that I'm using a lot of, kind of matching it with the entrance over here in the main building. And it's just, you know, it lacks detail. It lacks intrigue. It's a little bit boring. I'm going to change maybe the texture inside of it. Add a little bit more to the outside. I don't know. I'm having a little think. So this is the point I decided I'm going to block out the side. Now, obviously I can't block out the side entirely because that's where the train is. The train will not always float, by the way. The idea is very much to build a thing underneath the train tracks. I'm going to build my own... basically, I didn't want to use the one the game does because the game is like this dark wood. It didn't really suit. So I'm going to use a limestone and brick and build struts that go along and kind of support the train track eventually. But I didn't want you entering from the right hand side anymore since I've got the opening on the left, and I thought it'd just look a little silly, really. And closing that off really helps. What we do next? A little bit of detail work in the area, and then it's probably time for the road. So put some poles in. Love a good pole. Have I been to Poland? I've been to Poland very briefly though. Yeah, so as I say, I didn't want the coaches to feel like they just kind of came out of nowhere. I wanted them to feel like they came down an actual functioning road. There isn't tons of detail in this by any stretch of the imagination, and it does fade out into like a gaggle of trees that makes no sense. But the idea is that as you walk around the zoo, the view that you get makes sense. Maybe it doesn't work from like an aerial point of view, but I don't think that has to matter. It's kind of like in, I think I mentioned this recently in something else, but it's kind of like in digital art, or you're painting a miniature or something like that, and you bring the attention to the face, and to the shoulders, and to the chest, and it's basically true for whatever you're designing, really, unless it's like concept art in particular. And that's where you'll do most, if you know, not everyone has unlimited time on their hands, myself included. So if you're trying to prioritize, you bring attention to the more important areas. And for a zoo, that's the stuff you can see. You know, there's not much point spending 5 hours working on something that a zoo guest would never ever see, right? And that when we do our tour, you'll never ever see. So I think that's an important thing to keep in mind just in general. Just try to focus on the important things. At the end of the day, Planet Zoo can be a very, very time-consuming game, and a lot of people get burnt out really easily on it just because it does feel like it takes a long time to do anything. Because it does, because you've got so much creative control. And that's a good thing, it's just sometimes it feels quite heavy. Just give yourself a break, you know, focus on the big stuff. Focus on foliage when it comes to exhibit design and stuff like that. So I don't really do building interiors because I just don't care about them. So working on a little road, putting a little zebra crossing in, nothing particularly fancy, maybe even not realistic, really, probably not at all, but it's just so that when you glamps? That was glance and glimpse, by the way, it's glamps now. So when you glamps down the road, it looks like a road. It looks somewhat viable without necessarily being overly designed or anything like that. So that was really all I had in mind for that sort of section. Oh, I did work on this now. I did a little bit of an interior. I put some signs up. There's going to be quite a few signs that you won't see now, but I have worked on since. One of them is, I should talk about it now because I'm not going to be talking in, how long? Oh, where's my mouse? Ugh. 12 seconds. I've done a sign for the central station, which is one half of the signs, and the other side, because you'll see there's this big blank space on the right hand side, and there's not going to be the links or the ibex there, because the idea is the train takes you to the links and ibex, right? So what I've done, and you'll see in a second, is a sign for an aquarium, the Amsterdam Aquarium. Now, I have wanted to build an aquarium in Planet Zoo for about a year. Ever since I started doing those mod videos, you know, where we looked at like the orca and the sharks and we built shark tunnels and stuff like that, I've loved the idea of building an entire enclosed indoors aquarium. It's really exciting. Now, that doesn't necessarily work with the stuff that Planet Zoo's got. There's a few animals that would, but, you know, it would have to be a modded section because there's tons of fantastic fish mods out there. There's sharks and there's whales. There's tons of amazing stuff. So it's a possible idea for the future. And then you'd have like a reptile house and like an insect. It'd be so much fun to build. I love the idea of doing that. Now that is, I'll just quickly explain it now. So next video, the idea is very much lynx and ibex. I don't know which order they're going to be in. I don't really know what they're going to look like, but the idea is the train takes you up towards the mountains. Is that ever going to work? I'm still thinking about that, because I've got room on the left as well, which I'm thinking could be like a more general zoo-ish area. I'm still thinking about it. I'll think about it. I'll sort it out. But the left is sort of taken up by the coaches and stuff, and then there's a little bit of room if you want to expand further down the line into something else. The right is completely empty at the moment. Now I can block all those areas in with buildings. Maybe once we've done the lynx and ibex, we're just kind of done. But at the moment I'm really enjoying the zoo, so I'd like to leave open the possibility of carrying on in the future. So next video, definitely lynx and ibex. I will figure out what on earth that's going to look like. We're going to head into the mountains probably on the train and look at the lynx and ibex. But that big area on the right hand side is where I'm reserving space for a potential aquarium sort of thing. And if we decide to carry on after the lynx and ibex, if I'm enjoying it, if you folks at home are still enjoying it and watching it and stuff like that, then maybe that's something we'll come back to. I don't know. I really like the idea, and I feel like it's something I would do anyway, so why not just include it as part of this? My only concern is that this zoo is going to have so many pieces. It is already chock-a-block with stuff. Every single building, you know, has tons of pieces in it. It's like 200-300 each on average, and there's tons of the bloody things, so that's a slight concern, but we'll see how it goes. Anyways, thank you so much for joining me. I know this was an animal episode, and they tend to be less well-received, but I think you'll really enjoy looking at the building in detail, and I'll see you lovely folks next time. Leave some ideas down below for the lynx and ibex. Any inspirations, any images that you really like or anything like that would be really cool. And that's about it from me. Thank you so much for joining me. I'll see you lovely folks next time. Stick around for some great shots of the finished zoo, hopefully. Maybe awful shots, who knows. Cheers much love as always. Bye-bye.
Reaching out.